What if one of the best things you could do for your acting career was spend less time thinking about your acting? Now, before anyone drives off the road, hear me out. Because some of the healthiest, happiest, and most successful actors I've known had something surprising in common. Acting wasn't the only thing in their lives. Today, we're talking about why becoming a more interesting human being may actually make you a better actor. This is Casting Actors Cast.
Casting actors cast, what a show! With Jeffrey Dreisbach, we're ready to go. From agents to gigs, learn what you lack. Tune in every week, we're bringing you back.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Casting Actors Cast. I'm Jeff Dreisbach. Thank you for joining me. Now, this is part 2 of our Actors Reset series. In our previous episode, we talked about letting go of the invisible report card. We discussed why actors often continue grading themselves long after school is over, and why professional growth requires a different mindset. Today, we're taking that conversation one step further, because once actors stop treating auditions like exams, they often encounter another challenge. They've made acting their entire identity. And while that sounds noble and passionate and artistic, it can actually become a serious obstacle. Let's talk about that. But first, this is that moment of the conversation where I simply get to say thank you for tuning in to Casting Actors Cast. It's been a pleasure bringing these podcasts to you. If you'd like some more information about the podcast, or you want to check out my new book, I've got a course that's available. Just simply go to castingactorscast, all one word.com. Oh, by the way, there's a form that you can fill in that says dive into the talent pool. Just filling out that form will open up a whole bunch of freebies for you. One is a free book, absolutely free on doing voiceover work. The other is a video called Casting Secrets, What They Don't Tell You. Finally, I just want to say, as you check out the website, please consider leaving me a thumbs up, a like, whatever you can do to show that you are appreciating the effort that I'm putting into these podcasts. Especially a review on iTunes. That's like the holy grail of getting, good response. And I want to grow this podcast. I've been doing it for quite some time now, and you can help me. So if you're getting anything out of these podcasts, please consider showing me a little love back. That would be really, really cool on your part. Thank you so much. The old actor myth. Let's begin with one of those famous pieces of acting advice ever given. You've probably heard this. Maybe a teacher told you this. Maybe another actor might have told you this. Maybe you read this in a book. It goes something like this. If you can do anything other than acting, do that. I had that conversation. Or if acting isn't the only thing you can imagine doing, you'll never make it. You know what? For years, I believed that. Many actors do. It sounds romantic and committed and heroic. The struggling artist, the tortured creative soul, the actor who sacrifices everything for their craft. But there's just one problem. Real life doesn't work that way. And honestly, most successful actors I know don't live that way either. Here's the problem with building your entire identity on one thing. Let's say you're building your entire self-worth on acting. So what happens when you don't get an audition? What happens when you don't book? What happens during a strike? What happens during a slow season? What happens when your agent retires? What happens when life gets complicated? If acting is your entire identity, every professional setback feels personal. Every rejection feels existential. Every quiet period feels like a crisis because you're not simply losing an opportunity, you're losing a piece of who you believe you are. Now, listen, that's a heavy burden for any career to carry. And frankly, it's unfair, not to the career, to you. The most interesting actors I've known over the years, and I've worked with thousands of actors, some pretty incredibly famous, some just beginning, some in the middle of their long, successful careers. And guess what? I've noticed something. The actors I enjoyed being around most usually had lives, big lives, interesting lives. They traveled, cooked, read, taught, built businesses, raised families, painted, volunteered, played music, restored motorcycles, learned languages, collected strange hobbies. One actor I knew became obsessed with bird watching. Bird watching. I remember thinking, how can somebody be passionate about birds? Then they spent 20 minutes explaining migratory patterns, and suddenly I was fascinated. Not by the birds, by them, their curiosity, their enthusiasm, their engagement with life. That's what audiences respond to as well. Interesting people are often interesting actors. Now let's talk about why life feeds art. And I think this is something worth remembering. Acting is about portraying human experience. How do you portray human experience if you're not experiencing life? Think about it. Characters fall in love, lose jobs, raise children, care for parents, take risks, make mistakes, start businesses, travel, fail, recover, hope, fear, dream, live. The broader your life experience becomes, the larger your emotional and imaginative toolbox becomes. Now, listen, I'm not saying you need to climb Mount Everest, although if you do, please send a picture. I'm saying that life itself is valuable preparation. Every experience teaches you something about people, and acting is ultimately about people. You know, I once knew an actor who could somehow turn every conversation back to acting. Did you know someone like that? I see this on occasion, and it's so strange because every conversation, like for example, I'd say, how was your vacation? And they'd respond, it really deepened my process. You'd ask, did you enjoy dinner? And they would answer, the pasta reminded me of emotional availability. Even the waiter wasn't safe. Would you like dessert? Only if it's truthful. Eventually, you start realizing the world is larger than acting. And that's a good thing because acting should enrich your life, not replace it. Let's talk about the creative ecosystem. Now, here's a phrase I want you to remember. That is creative ecosystem. Your acting career should not be a single tree. It really shouldn't. It should be a forest. Acting may be the tallest tree, the most important tree, the tree you love the most, but it shouldn't be the only tree. You see, you might also teach, write, direct, create content, study photography, coach actors, volunteer, start a podcast. Trust me, I know someone who did that. The point is this. When one branch of your creative life slows down, another branch can continue growing. That is emotional stability. That's sustainability. That's longevity, and longevity matters. Years ago, I watched a talented actor leave the profession. Not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked opportunities, because they lacked balance. Every emotional need was being fulfilled by acting. The validation, identity, purpose, community, meaning, hope. When work slowed down, everything collapsed. You know what? That story stayed with me because it taught me something important. A healthy actor needs more than auditions. A healthy actor needs a life. Now let's talk about something that gets confused all the time. Dedication versus obsession. The acting profession often celebrates obsession. We admire the actor who says, I eat, sleep, and breathe acting. And guess what? I really do understand the sentiment. Passion is very, very important. Commitment is important. Hard work is important. But obsession is different. Obsession says, if this isn't working, neither am I. Dedication says, this matters deeply to me, but it doesn't define my entire worth. That's a huge distinction. Think about elite athletes. The healthiest ones don't spend 24 hours a day thinking about their sport. They train intensely. Then they recover. They have families, interests, friends, other experiences. Why? Because human beings need balance. Actors are no different. The irony is that actors who develop healthy balance often becomes more creative, more available, and more resilient. They're bringing fresh experiences into their work instead of endlessly recycling the same old thoughts. We're going to talk about the professional actor's secret right after this. Okay, welcome back. And the professional actor's secret is really, I think, of value here because here's something that I observed over the years as a casting director. Many actors believe successful actors think about acting all day. Most don't. When they're working, they're working. When they're not working, they're living. Now, I know that sounds simple, but it may be one of the most valuable lessons you'll ever learn because many struggling actors spend enormous amounts of energy worrying about acting instead of actually living. And worrying isn't preparation. Anxiety isn't effort. Obsessing isn't productivity. Thinking about acting for 6 hours is not the same thing as improving as an actor. In fact, some of the best breakthroughs occur when you step away from the work for a while. That's true. You stop, you go for a walk, take a trip, read a book, learn something new, and suddenly a character problem solves itself. Now, why does that happen? Well, it's because your brain finally had room to breathe. So here's a real world example. Listen, years ago, I worked with an actor who was extraordinarily talented. Every class, every audition, every workshop, every conversation, acting, 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 acting. If you asked about their weekend, they talked about acting. If you asked about their hobbies, they talked about acting. If you asked about relationships, they talked about acting. Eventually, someone asked, so what do you do for fun? And after a long pause, the actor answered, I prepare. Now that's dedication, but it's also a warning sign because eventually that actor became exhausted, burnt out, disconnected. The career wasn't the problem. The lack of balance was. Compare that to another actor I know, wonderful performer, works constantly, but also hikes and travels and volunteers and plays the guitar, loves history, studies architecture. Every time you speak with them, they've discovered something new. And guess what? That curiosity shows up in their work. They're fascinating because they're fascinated. That's a lesson worth remembering. Now let's move into what I call the 5-thing exercise, and we'll make this practical. I want you to take out a sheet of paper. Seriously. Pause the podcast if you need to. Please pull the car over if you're driving. Now, at the top of the piece of paper, I want you to write, who am I besides an actor? Now, list 5 answers. Yeah, 5. Not 1, not 2, 5. Maybe you're a parent, a teacher, a traveler, a runner, a photographer, a reader, a volunteer, a gamer, cook, musician, history buff, dog lover, whatever is true for you. Here's the challenge. If you struggle to find 5 answers, that's valuable information. It's not criticism, it's information, because it may indicate you've been placing too much pressure on one part of your life to fulfill every need. The goal isn't to love acting less. The goal is to love life more. And trust me, your acting will benefit. Now, this entire series is called the Actor Reset for a reason. We're not trying to throw away your training. We're not trying to abandon ambition. We're not trying to lower standards. We're trying to create healthier foundations. Episode 1, we stopped grading ourselves. Today, we're expanding our identity, because a stronger career starts with a stronger person, not the other way around. Listen, I've met actors who were desperate for a career to make them happy. I could honestly say that I was one of those actors. I also met actors who built happy, meaningful lives and brought that energy into their careers. The second group tends to last longer. They tend to enjoy the process more. And perhaps most importantly, they tend to remain human. Never underestimate the value of that. So here's a little humor before we go. Imagine introducing yourself at a party and someone asks, "Oh, tell me about yourself." And you respond, "Well, I had a call back in 2019. 20 minutes later, and then my agent suggested I update my headshot." Meanwhile, the person you're talking to has quietly left and joined another conversation. Please, do yourself a favor. Don't be that actor. Become interested in the world. Become interested in people. Become interested in ideas. Acting is a wonderful profession, but it is not the entire universe. Well, at least I don't think it is. Although some actors are still conducting research. So here's a challenge. I want you to do one thing this week that has absolutely nothing to do with acting. Nothing. No auditions, no classes, no self-tapes, no industry networking, no career strategy, just one activity that genuinely interests you. Okay? Read a book. Visit a museum. Take a walk somewhere new. Learn something. Explore something. Become curious again. And then pay attention to how it affects your creativity. I think you might be surprised. Truly. As we finish today's episode, I want to leave you with a thought. Acting is something you do. It is not everything you are. Okay, please, somebody write that down. That was really good. Acting is something you do. It is not everything you are. You are bigger than your auditions. You are bigger than your resume. You are bigger than your bookings. And you are certainly bigger than your rejections. The richer your life becomes, the richer your work becomes, the more curious you become, the more interesting your performances become, and the more fully human you become. And the more fully human you become, the more deeply audiences connect with what you do. That's the new paradigm. Not less commitment, not less ambition, more life, more experience, more humanity. Because great actors don't simply perform life, they live it. Next time in part 3 of Actors Reset series, memorization isn't the job until it is. We're going to tackle one of the biggest changes in my own thinking about auditions and why knowing your material deeply can be more important than ever. Until then, go live a little. I'll see you next time. I'm Jeff Dreisbach, and this has been Casting Actors Cast.
From monologues to screen tests to every episode.